"One of the great beauties of capitalism," said the undertaker to the intern, "is that it allows one to carve up long-established aspects of life and put them behind paywalls." The intern didn't seem to be paying attention. "In bygone days, families would prepare their dead for burial themselves in their own homes. This meant that people living in the past had a much more visceral relationship with death than we have in our modern society today," said the undertaker as he attempted to extract a particularly troublesome kidney from the corpse on the table. "Then the Industrial Revolution happened, and people like us started to see the monetary potential in other people's suffering." The kidney finally gave way, and a steady stream of blood started to exude from the open wound. "Here, hold this, would you?" said the undertaker, thrusting the kidney at the intern as he grabbed a cloth. "I think I'm going to be sick," said the intern. "Another great beauty of capitalism," the undertaker continued unperturbed, as he attempted to stem the veritable tide of red liquid now leaking onto the tiled floor, "is that one can pay almost anyone to do almost anything." "Thank you," he said, taking the kidney back from the intern, who appeared to be regretting every decision he'd made that had led him to this point. "Oh, don't worry. You'll see myriad sputums over the course of your week here. One becomes familiar with them all in time. You learn to greet them as old friends when circumstance prevails them to appear." The intern, wide-eyed and pale-faced, looked for all the world like a ghost, or at the very least, as if all his blood had drained onto the floor as well. "Will you excuse me for a moment?" he asked politely. "I think I need a drink." "As long as it's only water," said the undertaker. "The only stiff ones we undertakers generally accept are the kind you see before you on the table." The intern nodded desperately. "That's fine, I only meant water." He dashed for the door. "Oh, would you like a glass?" he remembered. "No, thank you, young man," said the undertaker. "By the way, remind me to tell you the story of the drunken embalmer upon your return from the facilities." "Yes, sir, I will do," said the undertaker, finally managing to leave the room. "Peculiar boy," muttered the undertaker to himself, as he continued his tinkering in the torso. "Seems of reasonable stock." He chuckled to himself as he recalled the anecdote he was about to tell. He didn't believe in paperwork or manning the till. If he wanted to be an undertaker, he had to be prepared to deal with the dead. It was all well and good learning about the different brands of coffin and the various accoutrements that could be added for a small extra fee, but if you couldn't hack a cadaver, then what was the point? It is, of course, important to learn about the different types of funeral and of all the ways one can dispose of a loved one, but if a young upstart can't deal with the deceased, then there's no point in knowing any of it. The intern returned. A grimace crossed his face as the cold, tainted air of the cellar pierced his nostrils again. "Don't worry. One becomes used to the smell. One begins to find it comforting after a while, like the smell of sawdust in the circus tent, or the aromatic odour of a lover that still lingers in one's sheets for days after their departure." The intern tried to hide his bewildered expression with an intellectual frown-nod combination. He found it difficult to imagine this old man having a lover, which, now he thought about it, was probably a blessing. He couldn't even imagine him at the circus, for that matter. A shiver went down his spine as he wondered what the undertaker had meant by the word "departed." "You were going to tell me about the drunken embalmer," prompted the boy, trying to shake the monstrous thoughts from his mind. "Oh yes," the undertaker chuckled. You could almost hear the creaking of muscles behind the old man's half-smile, the boy thought. You could almost hear his skin cracking like a glow stick. "There was once an undertaker who enjoyed a tipple," he began. "An old friend of his had died rather unexpectedly, and it was his unfortunate task to prepare the friend's body for the funeral. In preparation, the undertaker drank half a bottle of whiskey or more and began work. The next morning, his wife asked him why he wasn't wearing his wedding ring, and the undertaker realised he must have dropped it somewhere. He searched his house top to bottom, then his work, but no sign of the ring. It was only as they were lowering the casket into the ground that it dawned on him what must have happened. So he instructed his colleagues to exhume the only partially buried box from the grave, much to the horror of the vicar and the man's family and friends. He explained that he'd lost his wedding ring, and this was the only logical place for it to be. The congregation waited while, for half an hour or more, the undertaker rummaged around inside every nook and cranny of the corpse, but to no avail. With renewed trauma, the man was relayed to rest in eternal slumber. It was only on his way home that the man happened to put his hand in the back pocket of his trousers and remembered that he put the ring there for safekeeping before the procedure. He dropped it down the nearest drain rather than be found out. "Did that really happen?" asked the intern. "I doubt it," said the undertaker with a sigh. "Well, you know what they say about undertaking," began the boy, in a vain attempt to break the awkward silence with the only joke on the subject he could remember. Yes," cut in the man, "but of course it's not really true, is it?" "No, I suppose not, but if you want to be an undertaker, you need to learn some better jokes." "Do you have any others?" the intern asked hopefully. The undertaker hesitated. "Another time, perhaps. You are here for a whole week, remember? We don't want to blow through them all before lunch on Monday, do we?" "No, sir," said the boy, somewhat dejected. There was a pause. The old man looked up at the bewildered boy standing before him. He was not an unkindly man, and he remembered vaguely, in the deep annals of history, being a youth, and similarly out of his depth. This boy wore different clothes to what he'd worn in his day, had different hair, and almost certainly listened to different music. But people are more or less the same regardless of place and era. And he should know. In this line of work, you see the end result of every new generation. An endless stream of lifeless husks, devoid of personalities, memories, hopes, dreams, and musical preferences. And sometimes you're unfortunate enough to deal with those cut down long before their time. Some, even younger than the boy opposite him, who was currently holding a scalpel and trying not to look at any exposed organs. "Now, let's get down to brass tacks," began the undertaker with a wry smile. "It's always cheaper to import copper handles for your coffins." Okay, thanks," said the boy, reaching for his empty notepad and pencil. "Never mind," said the man. "Pass me the forceps, would you?"